So, you want that sweet and juicy pit 150 achievement, huh?
Nice.
Or maybe you want to hit for hundreds of thousands of trillions. Damn right you do, you dirty dog. But the problem is that you're god-awful at the game, and you have no gear. Scrolling through the pit leaderboards, you see that everyone has gear worth 1 trillion gold, hits every masterworking crit, has hundreds of hours of game time. Of course, you get demotivated and quit, you fucking loser. You have 12 kids and 19 jobs to take care of. But there are some quick fixes to get that achievement done, and that's why I'm here. That, and to make god-awful fart jokes, of course. Because you don't need any insane gear or hundreds of hours. Instead, I went in on a budget, made a build focusing on the bare minimums you need to get your build sorted to clear the highest of pit. Because that's all you need to do, really, if you're not interested in speedrunning on the leaderboards, as there's no other reason in farming 150s. You need to get it done once, get your achievement, and move on with your life. So let's walk our way through it, shall we? These are the basic requirements that you're going to need. 1. Masterwork your gear to 12 out of 12 and hit the correct masterwork at least once. 2. Shroud of False Death. It can be done without it, but you will actually have to turn your brain on. 3. Around 220 to 30 Paragon points. And finally, a 1 GA on all at least your core items, such as the Rod of Kepaliki and Banished Lord's Talisman. If you farm just a few billion gold, then you're going to have the same gear as I have. I'll show you what to prioritize, though, don't worry. With that out of the way, let's quickly go over the core mechanics of this build. It's similar to that of the typical Shatter Cringeborn build, just built with dogshit gear. In nearly all Cringeborn builds, you're running the Midnight Sun Ring. But for pushing 150s, you want to throw that piece of shit in the trash and instead temper Lucky Hit. Chance to restore resources. You don't need it to be GA, and you don't need to hit it while masterworking. You just need it to be a half-decent roll and you're Gucci. The reason as to why we want to throw the Midnight Sun Ring in the fucking trash is because we can then rock the plane's power aspect instead. Utilizing this, we get 7% big hecking dam per point of ferocity. We'll be able to get 14 stacks, which turns out to be a whole lot of damage. But to boost it even further, you'll temper mythic circle potency everywhere, and this damage just skyrockets. The other ring is going to utilize the Fell Soothsayer's aspect as to nuke the entire screens with chain reactions whenever an enemy dies. Other than that, though, the build follows the typical setup. Let's work our way through the gear and aspects so you know what to prioritize, and then I'll teach you how to get hecking good and blast this build like a pro. Starting us right off, we have a helmet. No shit, man, but what helmet? This one. It's pretty god-awful, but it doesn't matter. You don't even need a GA on the max resource here, as you'll only need roughly 240 maximum resource for this build to work. But the more, the better, as everything boosts the damage of Rod of Kepaliki. In any way, here your main priority is to masterwork resilience. Each stack equals 5% health, and this is insanely important to get as to boost the bugged Viscous Shield legendary node. You will basically force yourself to master crit this twice, but you will do without it as well. The other items that you want that double master crit on are the pantaloonies, your amulet, and the weapon. Get all of this done, and you will be hitting upwards of a quintillion. Now for the regular speed farming variants, I typically recommend the Shaco, due to the massive cooldown reduction it provides, along with some lovely stats. But that's just not an option for Big Dam, as we must have Resilient along with the apprehension aspect here. When it comes to the chest, you definitely want the Shroud of False Death. So if you don't have one, then you need to start killing the fat diabetic a few hundred times or craft it yourself. Preferably, you'll also get a GA on the max life, but you'll be fine without it. For the gloves, the only thing you need is a lucky hit chance to restore resources. Without this, the build doesn't work. As long as you have Shroud of False Death, then a regular roll should fully restore your resources. This is due to us having measured Ravager, Vigorous, and Resource Generation on the chest and Perragons. Combine all of this, and you'll get all of your resources back when it triggers. Another thing to note, though, is that with this shit gear, you won't be able to deal any substantial damage on single target. This doesn't really matter, seeing as you need to gather up enemies to deal damage anyways, but could be a thing to consider. This is due to us generating way more lucky hits when there are more targets that we can hit. And of course, grab the redirected force aspect as per usual. Next up are the pantaloonies. If you get a max rolled interdiction aspect here, then you're in luck, because they sell for 50 billion gold. A max roll along with a triple crit on the maximum resolve is how most of the gamers get their quintillions of damage, unless they're using exploits, of course. In any way, you won't need the armor here, as that should instead be dex. I'm also slapping on the exorsal runes here, followed by Poke in the weapon and barrier generation in all the other items. You may have also heard that you must get 120% barrier generation or else the build crumbles. You don't. Having 120 means that your Earthen Bulwark rune instantly fills up your barrier, but you get one every second, so you're fine with not rolling max barrier generation everywhere. In any way, next up are the sneakers. The duelist aspect is insane now, as it both grants a bunch of attack speed and boosts the plane's power aspect. And of course, the Rod of Kepalika. Here you want to purchase one with a GA on the core skills and high rolls on the others. As everyone has a fat guy obsession and kills the diabetic fatty a gazillion times per day, the price of this thing is basically close to nothing. So just buy it. But what you absolutely must get is 3 on the aspect. That's your highest prio. Next up, we have the amulet. Here you'll go full big dick on the max life, as it's a huge damage buff. Second prio is attack speed and core skill ranks, but getting one with a GA on max life is basically free. Hey, I've even been giving them away for free, and I'm a broke boy. And finally, the rings. The aim in this build is to get a total of 164% attack speed. This isn't too hard to get, but still, I decided to go without it. The reason you want this amount of attack speed, though, is due to us being able to hit the attack speed breakpoint of 11 frames per second, which substantially increases our damage. But honestly, man, just get as much of it as possible, and you'll be fine. Other than that, though, max life and resource cost reduction are your best friends. This is due to them scaling the Rod of Kepalike, basically counting as if you're spending more resources. Confusing, yes. Insanely OP, also yes. And of course, can't forget Mythic Circle potency for the biggest dam imaginable, because big dam equals big dick. Alright friends, those are the basic requirements in the gear and aspect department. I'm just going to quickly run you through the Spirit Hall and skill tree, as we've already covered it before. Double Jaguar is the name of the game, both due to the double dipping of the primary Jaguar and the ferocity boost of the second. In the skill tree, you're able to grab every single passive pretty much that scales your damage, so we are in luck there. And the reason Quill Volley has such insanely strong lucky hit chance is mainly due to us busting out a buttload of hits with it. 5 here, 3 here, and then double it and give it to the next person from the Rod of Kepalike. We then just go for all the typical choices where we only need to focus on damage, as we're legit running around with a 30,000 barrier and a huge damage reduction bonus from Perseverance. Do this all the way down to the key passive. Another reason as to why attack speed is so important in this build is due to us not rocking any cooldown reduction. This in turn means that we need to blast out a gazillion hits for Prodigy's tempo to lower the cooldown of our skills. Combine this with grabbing 5 points in Armored Hide though, and we can at least keep that skill up permanently, which is the most important to focus on, seeing as it grants us a massive damage boost via the extra resolve stacks, along with making all nearby enemies vulnerable, way more consistent than the vulnerable from Quill Volley. Alright, so that's the skills. Let's check out the mercenaries, because there is an important choice you need to make there. We first have Ra here. Everyone is running this guy in the leaderboards, and why is that? Well, shit son, due to the damage bonuses. Fortify boosts your overpower damage, and he also has an AoE taunt for additional damage. But there is a problem. This fucking guy is annoying as hell, and he pushes enemies away from you. So unless you kill enemies fast enough, then he will screw up your kill combo. This can be insanely annoying as you're pushing, and you can therefore run Subo instead if you're having issues with Raher fucking up your run. You would then work your way towards opening fire for the additional crit damage. And we can't forget the cannibal baddie either. She helps out a bunch with the attack speed breakpoints, but there is a massive issue. You only get the bonus for 1/3 of the run, meaning it's not entirely reliable. Sad times. But still, helps you out a bunch if you're close to the breakpoints. Good job, friends. We're almost done now. Consider dropping a sub, because if you don't, I'll delete my channel, and you know it, my man or woman. And I'll also step on your balls. Alright, so starting us off, we have Ritual. I currently have 280 points spent, which is a fair amount. You absolutely don't need this many though, and if you have less, then you shave off as many points as possible as to only keep the glyph bonuses first. If you're still lacking, then you can shave off some attack speed and check out the attack speed calculator to be just slightly above one of the frames. And if you're still lacking, then you can shave off some barrier generation. Worst case scenario is that you need to drop Lucky Hit. And finally, Max Life. In any way, this particular setup focuses on if you don't have Shroud, so that you'll at least get all the max life nodes and shit. In any way, let's start. Here we have Ritual for the Mystic bonus, and follow it up with Sapping for Big Damn, a bunch of max life and resource nodes, and Hubris to boost the nearby maximum resource nodes. Focus on leveling this glyph first. It's the most important one. Next, we go to Convergence, where we socket Talon for the crit damage and head on over the bugged Viscous Shield, where we socket Spirit. The only node that I would like to have that I don't is Sentinel. So if you have the Shroud, then you can move this board if you want. And for final board, we have Revealing, where we socket Colossal for yet another multiplier via max resolve stacks. Just lovely. Well, damn son, you still here? Nicely done. And we got done just in time, seeing as it's already get fucking good o'clock, and you know it, baby. Here it does require us to use a bit of finesse when your gear ain't great. If it's insane, then you basically just bash your head on the keyboard as hard as possible, and shit just dies instantly. But we need to actually play the game to win, so that's the main downside of being a dad gamer and not being able to play 15 hours a day. So let's take it step by step. Your main job here is to stack up enemies, get the tiny enemies to die so that the big ones die as well. Because that's how the Shatter Tech works in this build, via the Fell Soothsayer's aspect. Alright, and how does one go about doing that? Well shit, you use Vortex to pull them in. The only difficult part here is to get the enemies to also be within your Mystic Circle, which is this weird-looking thing on the ground that is barely visible. Because within it, your damage fucking skyrockets. And how do you get them to be within your Mystic Circle then? Well, damn son, it resets every 10 seconds. So every now and then, you can reposition. You then drag the enemies within your Mystic Circle and blow them up. Simply as that. Once the enemies are within your circle and stacked up, your kill priority is basically to blow up the purple shield aura enemies, followed by stacking the tiny white mobs so far up the elite's assholes that they start crawling out of their mouth. because that's when they start exploding. You then just keep pressing all of your cooldowns and spam quill volleys in their face. What's rough about not having gear worth 1 trillion gold, though, is that some enemies are absolutely god-awful to play against. For example, some big shield enemies with a bunch of health and whatnot. And if your gear is actually atrocious, then you may need to leave a few times to get enemies that doesn't make you want to kill yourself. The same goes for the bosses. Here is a list of bosses with ads. In a Pit 150, the boss has to have ads or else you just leave instantly because you can't kill them without ads. Some ads are better than others, of course, but your main goal here is to just stack them up as close to the boss as possible by pulling them in via Vortex. And here you can also see Rahir completely fucking up my kill combo in action. You then blow them up and blow the boss up with them. This may take a few tries though, because the hitboxes on the Shattertech is sometimes all messed up. Just keep trying and you'll get the kill eventually. And don't leave the pit if it's taking too long either, because once you get the kill combo up and running on a boss, then you will be able to kill it instantly. And that, my friends, is all for this one. Drop a sub, become a Perragons member to support your boy, and I'll see you in the next one.